Partnerships are important to ODA. Last year, we entered into a partnership with Building Smart International, and we've been very active in our work with BSI to support their efforts with IFC, BCF, and other open BIM standards. This year, I'm very pleased to announce that ODA has entered into a partnership with the Open Geospatial Consortium. OGC is dedicated to promoting open standards for geospatial information. OGC is responsible for a large set of geospatial standards, and in recent years there's been discussion on how to best integrate geospatial standards with BIM standards. ODA is an elite development organization and has deep experience with step-based standards including IFC. So there's good synergy between the two organizations, and I'm pleased that ODA and OGC will be teaming up to help solve these important problems for the industry.
Hello, I'm Scott Simmons with the Open Geospatial Consortium. I'd like to thank the Open Design Alliance for inviting me to speak to you today and give you OGC's perspectives on the integration of BIM and GIS content. First, a little bit about the OGC. So the Open Geospatial Consortium is a consortium representing over 500 members from industry, government, research, and academia. We function as a hub for thought leadership on all things location. We're a neutral and trusted forum for tackling these interoperability issues around location, and we're well known as a consensus-based open standards organization, making those standards available freely to all of you in the community. Our main purpose is to ensure that geospatial and location data are more fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. But let's talk specifically about integration of BIM and GIS data. So back in 2005, the OGC established something referred to as the CAD-GIS Domain Working Group. That was a group focused really on just the transformation between and integration of CAD and GIS data. Can you take your CAD data files and ingest them in a GIS, and vice versa? A fairly simple problem set to many, something that's been achievable through software algorithms and such to bring content back and forth, but only a tiny piece of the real problem. And so by 2007, we had realized that the bigger issue was one of 3D information management. There are a broad number of topics in 3D content management, 3D discovery, and 3D data deliverables that we need to address. And so it's not just working with CAD data, with BIM data, with GIS data, but also looking at pushing that information to the web via something like a 3D portrayal service, i3S, or 3D tiles, looking at underground modeling, augmented reality, mission rehearsal for military, etc. And so within this 3D information management group, we've spun out any number of other groups that work on these specific topics. Well, as part of that effort, we also realized we needed to come to more focus on how we address the integration of the built and natural environment. And so in 2012, we established this vision that we still hold today, and that is we look at the Earth from a number of different perspectives, and each of those are important, and each of those need to be to some degree interoperable. On the left, you'll see the BIM perspective. Where are the actual buildings? What are their purposes on this Earth? At the bottom, the infrastructure, that is a civil engineering perspective. What is the supporting infrastructure for the built environment, and how does that civil infrastructure exist on the scale of maps and the geospatial scale, which brings me to the right side of the diagram, and that is the geospatial perspective from GIS. The entirety of the Earth all the way down to campuses. How do we look at those as an environment? How do we look at all the dependent information? And how do we provide the context for BIM and infrastructure data? So jointly, OGC and the Building Smart International developed the Integrated Digital Built Environment Working Group to tackle these issues specifically between BIM and GIS. And this diagram highlights the cyclical nature of our interrelationships between content. That is, the geospatial modeling provides information about the natural and built environment, typically on a relatively coarse scale, and provides the context in which you are going to build infrastructure or buildings. And that's where we get into the building information modeling, actually looking at the specific built pieces of that infrastructure. Now, when you build things, you change the overall context and you need to push it back to the geospatial side. And so ultimately, we have a cyclical data exchange necessary, or at least information passing back and forth across this dashed line in the middle of the diagram, which is not a hard line, but rather something of a fuzzy boundary. We have natural overlap between our areas of expertise, and there are gaps. And so we need to really try to address everything that ensures that the cycle is continuous. The IDBE does not exist in a vacuum. There are other organizations also looking at some of these same issues. ISO has Technical Committee 211 that deals with geographic information, and Technical Committee 59, Subcommittee 13 that looks at building information modeling, so the standards for BIM. ISO sits on all of these de jure standards. They have joint working groups, and then as you can see in this very complex diagram, all of us have interrelationships. We all work together through a various series of liaisons. And just like our relationships are complex, the nature of the data we need to exchange or we need to interoperate is just as complex. And so we have moved from focusing just on simple transformation from data to one to the other to a much more heavy emphasis on the semantic negotiation between our respective areas of expertise and the standards that address those, so that you as a person functioning in this world that has to operate with these standards works in the standard best suited to you with full confidence that we understand how your content in that standard might interoperate with other standards. As an output of IDBE work, we've just recently published this paper, The Built Environment Data Standards and Their Integration, an analysis of IFC, City GML, and Land Infra. I highly encourage you to take a look at this diagram. It's available, or this document. It's publicly available from both the OGC and Building Smart websites. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for your attention. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time with questions. I hope I can see you all in person sometime when things return to more normalcy. Thanks a bunch.